Hi everyone, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling. My wife Sarah is sitting in once again. And on this episode, where it's a review episode, album review episode. But before we get to that, I'm still very much selling copies of my 8-track book, Unspooled. And since, Sarah, you're sitting in on this with me, you've heard me talk about this book and this collecting long before the book actually came out. What was your impression when you first looked at the book?
Ultimately, I was blown away, I think, and I realize that I'm biased since I'm your wife, and I know Matt very well as well. Matt Phillips, of course, who helped.
Such a great job designing
tremendous. I don't even know what we want to credit him with, but
it's easier. It's easier to list what he didn't do.
Right, like anything aesthetic about the book is Matt and his tremendous eye for detail, really, and it's beautiful. So I really was blown away by how the book looks, and you're leafing through it, but no one can see it.
Well, no, I'm looking for a particular. Okay, the porch. So this is one thing that Sarah noticed that was a complete and total accident. This page where I've got all my Aerosmith 8-tracks displayed.
I was amused. That was one of the first things that I called out. That's our porch floor, and and as disgusting as we think it is, it looks beautiful in the book, and the color scheme
matches it.
Yes, which is I think why I'm almost at a loss for words other than to say that it's gorgeous. And I'm not a collector, let it be said, but I do like pretty things. So it's beautiful.
So yes, Unspooled was a hit. So yes, it's $90 for hardcover. That's Canadian. That's shipped. $65 for softcover, again, Canadian funds and shipped. Or if you just want a PDF file to look at on your device, a high res PDF, it's $15 Canadian. If you want to order, shoot me an email, timsvinylconfessions@gmail.com. If you're here in Canada, we can e-transfer. Anywhere around the world, I take PayPal. So just wanted to give that another plug. But for the purpose of this episode, it's safe to say that Sarah's taste in music and mine are, there are places where the planets collide, but not a lot. But if I had to say in our top 5 artists that we're both pretty big fans of, probably Bryan Adams would be up there on the list, I would say.
I think so. I do want to say we saw him in concert a few years ago, and I don't know what my expectation was going into it. I've always been a fan of his hits, we'll say. Wouldn't have really done a deep dive into his album like what we did with this one previously, but his concert was amazing. I think easily in the top 5 of concerts that I've ever been to. It really was exceptional. His vocals, everything sounded exactly as you may hope that it would sound live. And he's such a he's consummate professional, obviously. He's really looked after himself, so his voice is still outstanding.
His voice hasn't aged.
No, and I can't really speak enough as to what a great experience that was.
So I chronicled that. It's been over 3 years now. But if you type in Tim's Vinyl Confessions, Bryan Adams, that'll be one of the ones that come up. Avenir Center at Moncton, and just a great show, long show, lots of songs, and he and his band were just in top form. And at that time, he was promoting his album, which actually hadn't quite come out, but his album called Shine a Light. So that's because of the pandemic and everything. The time has just kind of flown by, and it's like, oh, he's got another album he just put out. Well, I guess that was 3 years ago. So yeah, so that's what we're here to talk about. It actually just came out. It's barely been out a little over a week at the point that you'd be watching this. Released March 11th. This is Bryan Adams and So Happy It Hurts. I've got my copy here as a nice lenticular cover. It's one of those ones that you don't dare, if something happens to it, then you're out of luck. You can't really replace it. And of course, he does all of his own photography. He's an accomplished photographer in his own right, besides being an accomplished musician and songwriter. This is what my copy looks like on the side. Now, I watched several other review episodes, including Brendan Snyder, a channel I like watching quite a bit. Brendan's was just plain black lettering along here. It didn't have this really odd, unique font. This is the back cover. And this album is the very first album that Bryan has recorded for BMG. It's the very first time in his career he's not on A&M Records, which is the label he signed with when he was 18. And, you know, he's been with them forever. I mean, granted, it's none of the same people that worked at the company are probably still there. So he's on BMG now. Another black and white cover, like his albums tended to just be him and some sort of black and white or gray color scheme. And yeah, he's got this kind of hard to read font throughout. He's
I like it though. It's cool.
he favors these you know, large hollow body electric guitars. Which kind of accounts, I guess, for some of the sound on the album. I'm a fan, you know, from way back from, you know, the Cuts Like a Knife Reckless days, and I like it when there's a little bit, just a little bit more distortion on the guitars. But I mean, at this point in his career, in his life, he's making music for himself. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He knows people are going to come see him live. And, you know, without giving away spoilers, this is a perfectly enjoyable album. And we're going to go through each track. Sarah's going to...
Is that how you want to do it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it overall. Do you want to go track by track before we talk about an overall?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, first song on the album is the title song, So Happy It Hurts. You've got a lot more notes than I do. I immediately, as soon as I heard this song, it comes in with the whoa.
I said that's
whoa.
a Mutt Lange.
And sure enough, it's a Mutt Lange songwriting credit. Actually, there's a lot of songs he co-writes with Mutt Lange on this album. It's, you know, it's infectious. It's just like it's a driving song. It's a summertime song.
Yeah, I would agree.
And
I think
there's a happiness to it. I mean,
that's
no
the
pun
first
intended.
thing that I wrote was it's happy sounding. I think it's fitting. It's title track.
Yeah.
It kind of encapsulates the vibe of the whole album. There's some charming Canadian references, like he talks
He's
about
going down the Trans-Canada
Trans-Canada
one. So yeah, he's never shied away from that.
No,
Proud
so if you're
Canadian boy.
that's kind of a fun reference. I think, to me anyway, it's got kind of that classic Bryan Adams sound, and then, like Tim said, you get the Mutt Lange chorus.
Yeah, definitely. And it's got you know, it's a good start. It's a good start. Next one, Never Gonna Rain. This one's a little different. It's kind of got a blues / gospel feel to it.
That's what I wrote. Also, I wrote that it was optimistic sounding,
Yeah.
which goes along with kind of the vibe of the whole album.
Bryan Adams doesn't exactly do dark, as it were. I guess probably the darkest album he ever did was Into the Fire. It's still not very dark. It's by way of comparison, right?
Right. But I did make note, it's got the quintessential Adams rock vocal. He's got such a, in my opinion anyway, he has such an excellent rock
And
rasp. But the man can sing.
And when we said that his voice hasn't aged, I mean, it really hasn't. I mean, he's 62, you know, Sarah and I joke when we play songs from his first couple of albums, she refers to it as Baby Bryan because he was so young sounding, even though he was 20, 21, 22. But like by 1983, when Cuts Like a Knife came out, he sort of had his voice. He definitely had it by the time of Reckless, and he's never lost it. He's never lost a bit of range. He's never lost the rasp. He's never lost his ability to emote. And, you know, he's always taken care of himself. He's vegan, I think, but he went vegetarian all the way back in '88. And, you know,
I believe he's vegan now.
You have never, ever seen a picture of Bryan Adams where he looks out of shape.
No.
Like, ever. Like, he's always stayed really, really thin. That's how he can...
When he's doing yoga.
He's got the stamina to go on tour for 3-4 years at a pop. And but most rock singers, I mean, your voice is your asset. And a lot of my favorite singers, they just lose it over time. And sometimes it's through no fault of their own. It's just aging. Your vocal cords get, they thicken up, and it takes more air to push through them. But you don't hear that with him. It seems timeless. Like when he wrote 18 Till I Die, I mean, I think he meant that. Which brings us to, of course, there's going to be ballads on here. First one is track 3, You Lift Me Up. This is not a cover of the Josh Groban.
I think that one's You Raise Me Up.
You Raise Me Up. There you go.
But it makes me, that's what it makes me think of too, just the title alone. Yeah. I think, and I just said this to Tim, we were listening to it when we were doing the dishes, that I wish that there was more guitar, like, because the sound is like the classic. It's Keith Scott, I believe. His
longtime guitar player, yeah. He's not on every song on here, and that's another thing to talk about, his musicianship. But yeah, it's always the right thing in the right place. But
I wanted more of it.
His solos are very short,
but it harkens back to that sound, like, of the ballads from the 90s that
it sounds like a lot of the songs from, like, Waking Up the Neighbors.
Yes, exactly.
It's not flashy. It's always just the right thing at the right time. This is another,
so it's nostalgic.
Mutt Lange co-write. There's again, happiness is the operative term here. This this whole album, you had mentioned that it seems like a love letter to
his wife, I think,
and his family. He's got I think 2 little girls. As far as musicianship on here, man, a lot of this he did himself, including the drums. He played a lot of the drums, bass, guitars, keyboards. He can do just about everything. He owns his own studio, The Warehouse in Vancouver. I mean, The Warehouse is a famous studio in his own right. I don't know, like, the last few AC/DC albums have all been recorded there. I mean, it's well known all over the world. I mean, for a band to travel, all the way from Australia or various ports of call where those guys all live, they just like the way the building sounds when they record there. And so it kind of makes sense. He did a lot of it himself because this is an album in the wake of the pandemic. If you're hearing what sounds like breathing, that's our dog Stella on the floor. She didn't want to miss anything.
I let her in.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call for a second.
She's snoring.
That's Stella. Okay, so the only additional musicians aside from some background singers, so Keith Scott appears on lead guitar on some of the tracks, and surprisingly enough, it's not Mickey Curry this time, but it's Pat Stewart. Pat Stewart, of course, has been with him since the days of Reckless. He's in some of the videos, and he did part of the tour because Mickey Curry was, like, not only a famous session drummer, but he kind of divided his time in the 80s between Bryan Adams and Hall & Oates. So he was busy doing something. And also, I think he's from New York, and Pat Stewart is from Vancouver. So I think he called, Keith Scott, Pat Stewart. They were probably in the area.
Geographically, it would be easier.
But you wouldn't know it wasn't a full band. It sounds like a full band. So track 4, I've Been Looking for You. This one harkens back to his album Get Up, which came out in 2015, which is the one he produced with, co-wrote with Jeff Lynne. Mm-hmm. And it's a rockabilly type song like You Belong to Me, the opening track, and Get Up. A little bit faster, actually. And it's just fun.
It's a co-write with Jim Valance.
Yeah, Jim Valance. He's like, his 2 main co-writers both feature here. I think Mutt maybe a little bit more than Jim, but...
Seems that way. I just wrote, I wrote just what you said, ultimately, rockabilly, like You Belong to Me, and it's just happy and upbeat. Yeah. So it's kind of a fun, short little song.
It's a short album. Like, there's 12 tracks on this album, and the album's about 39 minutes long, so none of the songs wear out their welcome. It just goes by at a pretty good clip. The next one is Always Have, Always Will. Now, okay, so this is a classic Mutt Lange co-written ballad, and she noticed that, it could have been a Shania song. It could have been
the 90s.
Like You're Still the One. It's got that kind of...
But it's faster. It's a more up-tempo version.
And it's got some more classic Keith Scott guitar on it. Again, nobody ever mentions him as a guitar player, as an influence or anything, but he always plays just the right thing. He never overplays, he never underplays, and, there's a reason why, Bryan Adams is not a band, but he's kept him alongside, because he understands his music and he always knows just what to play. The next one is interesting. On the Road. I guess this would be the last song on side 1 if we had this on vinyl. Another Mutt Lange co-write. This was written for the 2022 Pirelli calendar, which Bryan has done photography for in the past. You get like a late 90s alternative vibe in the verses of this, and I can't quite place it.
If I could have thought of what exactly the song was, I know that there's one later that I do have a call out as to what I thought it sounded like, but yeah, that was the note that I had made. The verse puts me in mind of late 90s alternative, but the chorus is completely different. The chorus is upbeat.
Yeah. Track 7 is called Kick Ass.
That one was kind of fun.
This is the first time ever on a Bryan Adams album where a song starts off with a narration, and
it's John Cleese.
No less than John Cleese doing the narration. So it's a sort of like a biblical, like in the beginning type of thing. And then when it starts out again, it's continuing that theme, and it kind of puts you in mind of "Let There Be Rock" by AC/DC.
I see you're using my notes and not your own.
Because we agree. I didn't have anything written. I said John Cleese narration, "Let There Be Rock." That's all
so my notes are better than yours.
They're very much better. So this one, I could picture this one being a fun song live. Like,
yes.
You know, he could almost open shows with this. You know, maybe play the narration before the band like through the PA and the band comes on stage. Next one, you know, it might be my favorite on the album. It's got a weird title. I Ain't Worth Shit Without You.
So it has some cowbell on it.
There's lots of cowbell.
That was the first thing I wrote down.
Verse-wise, the verses of this song remind me very much of classic Bryan Adams. They remind me of songs like Let Me Down Easy or This Time or Somebody. I mean, and you know, that Cuts Like a Knife Reckless era. That's my preferred era of his stuff. Chorus isn't exactly like that, but it's good. It's really, really good. It's a fun rocker, and this is one where you nailed the alternative thing.
I did. I felt strongly that it put me in mind of Stone Temple Pilots' Big Bang Baby.
Yeah.
Did I get that title correct?
Yeah, which in and of itself always sounded like a 60s rock and roll song.
Yeah.
So it's like da 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 da. It's got that kind of...
It's a fun song. Yeah. It was enjoyable.
Track 9, Let's Do This, another Mutt Lange co-write. The only thing I had written next to this is Night to Remember, because it sounds a lot like Let's Make a Night to Remember, which was also co-written with Mutt Lange. It has a swing to it, though. It's got a different slight feel, and your take on this lyrically is interesting.
So I said that it's a more upbeat Let's Make a Night to Remember, but whereas I think that song is kind of a sexy Bryan Adams song, this one is a more settled, committed version of it. So this goes back to, you know, where I said that I feel like it's a love letter to his wife and his family, and yeah, that's really kind of my thoughts on it.
Next one's called Just Like Me, Just Like You. It's a Jim Vallance co-write. You wrote down this had kind of a Beatles feel to it. No song in particular, but it's got sort of like George Harrison-esque slide guitar, a little psychedelia in the middle. Only just a little bit.
But it was that was interesting, though.
Yeah, like there's no, you know, it's not like 12 variations on a theme on this album. Tempo-wise and feel-wise, they're all quite different. And oddly enough, another song with Just in it, Just About Gone. This one has a slight, like, country feel to it. Up-tempo. This was also a song that was another co-writer on here that he's written with before is Gretchen Peters, who has also written for country artists. So that kind of makes sense there. Again, his voice ties everything together and makes it sound like it fits on one of his albums.
But you get some kind of subtle... Nothing that stands out as being markedly different from anything else on the album. This one maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But you do get some kind of slight musical variations. So this one is kind of the country sounding.
Yeah.
I wrote country guitar, classic country drum beat, I thought.
Yeah.
And then I was teasing you that we need to learn how to
Oh,
dance.
we could line. You could line dance to this. We're not going to.
We're not
but
very graceful.
Anybody out there, if you like line dancing, we're not judging. You could line dance to this song. And finally, these are the moments that make up my life. Now, when you get a title like that, you're probably thinking, This is not going to be like a Kids Wanna Rock type of song. But, and you're right, but it's also not a ballad per se.
No, I really thought that it was going to be like a sexy ballad. It's not. None of the songs on here are. Maybe the sexy ballads are done. Maybe those only happened in the 90s. I don't know. But again, it's a more grown up, mature, and settled. Lyrically anyway.
Yeah. And you know, that's basically it. I mean, it's
I thought it was fast flowing.
Yep.
The whole album.
Yeah, it never drags.
It does not. Like what you said, it's a good road trip.
It is.
Album.
Yeah, like, you know, it's those classic albums of his. They're hard to topple for me because they're just killer song after killer song, and when you've been living with them for so long, it's hard to have anything new come in and enter the cranium and take up that space. There are some fine songs on here, and I think this will be a grower the more that we listen to it. And it is a summer album, no question. Yeah.
Overall, I had, you know, we probably have repeated ourselves several, I know I did, but it's upbeat, it's optimistic, especially coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And really the whole album is truly a love letter to his family,
So,
which is pretty special. Not everybody would do that.
So there you go. Bryan Adams. So Happy It Hurts. There probably are some copies that just have a regular. I think what you're seeing here is the actual cover, but then it's got that variant on it. So that's what we think about it. Curious to see out there if anybody's been listening to it and what they think of it. So thank you for sitting in with me. So that's Sarah's and my take on the new Bryan Adams. Thanks everybody for watching Tim's Final Confessions.